Greetings and welcome to today's devotion here at Extraordinary Connection. My name is Pastor Devin, and I'm glad to have you joining me for this time. And I was wondering today, how many of you have been out enjoying that warmth and sunshine we've been seeing here recently? We're right in the thick of these summer months, and summertime in Michigan, it allows for all kinds of different activities, whether it's out on a lake somewhere enjoying the weather, or maybe out hiking in some of the beautiful state forests or parks we have in our state and in our communities. Maybe just enjoying it right in your very own backyard. Well, the recent warm weather has had me and my family out and enjoying some of those activities. This past Monday was a reminder that those hot temperatures can also require us to be a little flexible in our planning, I guess. For those of you who don't live in Romeo, Michigan, let me give you a quick explanation as to why that was. Monday saw the temperatures crossing the 90-degree mark here, and it was a hot one. You could tell it when you walked out the door. And it was sometime a little later in the afternoon that suddenly we found ourselves with no lights and no air conditioning. We quickly discovered that the power was out all across town. No one had any electricity. Thankfully, as I mentioned, it was a beautiful night, and we made the best of it. We were able to visit a local park. We cooled off on the splash pad for a while. We went on the swings. We went on the slide. We ran around the playground, and we were able to enjoy a family dinner together at a picnic table. It was an enjoyable afternoon and evening for me and my family. At least it was fun and enjoyable until we returned home and my son realized something. It dawned on him that we still didn't have power. And the fact that we had no power meant that the TVs didn't work. And that threw a huge monkey wrench into his plans because it was on the calendar for that evening that he and I were going to sit down and watch the next Star Wars movie in the series on Monday evening. He'd earned the privilege by completing a project. We'd planned it. We had popcorn and all the fixings planned, and I know he was excited. And then as we returned home and he saw that there was no power, he had the realization that his planned evening wasn't going to happen. And I saw the sadness on his face. His shoulders kind of slumped and his head went down. He was disappointed. Rightfully so, I'd even say. But this is where I get to have my proud dad moment. Because you see, he had a couple of choices on how he was going to respond to this disappointment. He could have let the disappointment rule the day. He could have even let it turn to despair and lamented how unfair it was that the power was out and it was going to ruin his movie night with Dad. He could have pouted, stomped off. He could have done any of those things. He could have let that night end on a sour note. But instead of those options, he picked himself up and he looked at me and he said, "Can we please plan to do it again soon? Hopefully when the power is back on." And as I said, I was very proud of him in that moment. Proud that he didn't let that disappointment rule over him, that he didn't let it turn to despair over the loss of that planned evening of fun, that he could look for what the future would hold. Now I share this not just so that I get to brag on my awesome 8-year-old a little bit. I tell you this because how often do we struggle with similar circumstances in our lives? It may not be a power outage leading to an easily rescheduled movie night, but how often do we have disappointments that happen in our lives? A promotion we don't receive, or a job prospect that falls through, a fight with a spouse or a loved one over something that really turns out to be quite inconsequential, a planned vacation that doesn't live up to expectations, or a prayer that we've sent up that has seemingly gone unanswered. That list of disappointments could probably go on and on. There's no shortage of times in our lives that we will face disappointment. But the one thing we can control, the one choice we get to make, is how we respond. Do we let that disappointment lead us on a downward spiral, one that ends in despair? Because we have that choice. We can either dwell on the negative, on the disappointment, or we can recognize that some things are outside of our control. And all we can do is choose how to respond. And this can be true in our spiritual life as well, because there will be times that we stumble, even times that we fall, times that hurt. And if we dwell on those times, we can allow it to continue to pull us down, allow it to continue to define who we are. Or we can instead turn our focus and focus on Christ. We can acknowledge our own failures, to be sure, but we can also acknowledge the grace and forgiveness that is offered to each one of us in those times of disappointment and despair. I'd recently earmarked Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 8. I'd read through them and I earmarked them. I thought it might be a sermon topic that I was going to use, but I realized instead as I read them here today that perhaps it was for today's devotion instead. Those verses read, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be a healing for your flesh and a refreshment for your body." In times of disappointment, trust in the Lord. When despair starts to creep in, acknowledge the Lord. Seek the Lord's wisdom. Seek the healing only the Lord can offer. And may each one of us be refreshed by the love of the Lord this day. May it prepare us for the challenges tomorrow will bring, the challenges we will face with the Lord. Until next time, my friends, stay safe, take care, and God bless.